Airbnb with
Yeah,
their ski
yeah.
season should be good right over there.
Well, affordable housing is a big issue. I just took a survey
Mayor?
one of these days. I'll tell you about it.
Can I have a couple of minutes? The streaming is hopefully up and running in a second, but it's
So
giving me
Matt just landed at the airport,
Tell me
so
when you're ready.
he's not coming, obviously.
Yeah, the affordable housing's alive and well. There's gonna be more legislation coming out this next year on that too.
Well, that's just ridiculous.
It's out of control. What they're saying is the market's changing.
I don't even know if I brought my cell phone. Let's see. There's one.
Brought one in.
I probably did. Oh, there's that pass.
We're good.
Find.
You ready?
Hey,
2 minutes out.
Just went to the thing and said, I'm in Jackson, so Matt told me to do. Race right, maybe?
supposed to be here and she's not.
Little sponge thing you've got sitting there.
She doesn't answer her phone or anything. You know,
You got one for your,
Yeah, okay.
okay. Okay. We're still about a minute out.
Nope, I don't, Jan. That's okay. I just can't believe I don't, but I don't.
Oh, absolutely. Here, I think I've got a pen.
No.
I don't care. I'll take whatever you got.
It's the same candy corn. I haven't taken it out on my purse, but it looks kind of hammered. My son and my grandkids are addicted to that.
Okay, we're about a minute out.
Be careful with that too. Can't got fixed like 3 times. Ten, 9, 8, 5:30. What were you waiting for?
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody out to the Roy City Council meeting. This is for August 17th, 2021. The meeting start time is at 5:30. We are located obviously in the Roy City Council chamber. I want to welcome also and recognize the fact is we do have Councilmember Paul, Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Wilson, Councilmember Burrell, and Councilmember Saxton joining us tonight. With that, we've asked Councilmember Paul if he would go ahead and lead us in a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance. Thank you.
all right, thank you, Mayor. Will you please join me in a moment of silence? All right, thank you. Now, if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, we do have a couple of consent items, specifically approval of the July 20th, 2021 Roy City Council meeting, as well as the work session. Any comments, questions about those particular documents in the minutes? Hearing none then, do I have a motion then to approve the consent items?
So moved.
With a couple of small changes.
Oh.
That I.
That you got
did
them?
Morgan,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh,
So,
as with amendments as corrected through Morgan.
okay. Then I do have a motion then to approve.
And I'll
Do I have
second it.
and Diane seconded, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, this is a public comment period. If you have anything you'd like to share with us on any topic, topics we're going to talk about tonight, or anything else you feel like to, please step up to the mic. Just give us your name and address and share whatever you'd like to share with us. Thank you.
Leon Wilson at 4302 South, 2675 West. One issue, concerned about the height measurement point at train station, and I'm encouraging the council to take a close look at current codes. It states grade. It has nothing to do with finished grade or natural grade. It just simply says grade. That definition alone is so broad, the people up above the train station could have easily buildings that exceed 25 feet above their grade where their home sits. I'm just saying, it doesn't clarify the starting point for the buildings. So when we say we can have a 35-foot building there, where do we start measuring it from? Encourage, if it doesn't, in the future, to be able to allow for that definition to be made more clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other thoughts, comments, questions, anything you'd like to share? Okay, hearing none. Appreciate that. Then I'll go ahead and close the public comment period. We do have some action items, so we'll need to work through those. Chief, looks like we have the swearing in of Sergeant Timothy Fulton. So if you'd like to talk a little about that, then we'll ask our recorder to go ahead and do that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Yes, finally, we get to swear in Sergeant Tim Fulton. We've had a calendar conflict for a couple of months, but Sergeant Fulton's been with Royce City since graduating high school. He's been with the PD for, looks like, the last 11 years. He was actually promoted under Chief Marino's tenure here. He's here with his wife, Jody. So if Tim wants to come up, get sworn in with his wife, and we'll get his badge pinned on.
Perfect. Thank you.
Appointed to the office of police sergeant. Do solemnly swear or affirm. That I will support, obey, and defend. The Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of Utah. And that I will discharge the duties. Of my office with fidelity. Of my office with fidelity.
I think we're looking for some, who do you have here that you brought with you?
So this is my beautiful wife, and I have my 3 kids back there, and then I have my mom, and you all know my dad, and I have my grandma and grandpa, and my father and mother-in-law, and then I have some of my crew that's here.
Perfect.
So.
Great. Thank you. Council, would you like to make any comments relative to this swearing in?
Congratulations. We're excited.
Definitely congratulations. He'll make a great leader.
We're excited. It's a great day. Okay, and I think, Matt, you're going to introduce some new officers to the council.
Yes, sir. So we actually have 4 officers here today. We have in the suit and tie, this is Officer Tyler Cunningham. He actually came to us from Clinton. He's got 11 years of service. And next in uniform, we have Eric Quiroz. We actually call him Quiznos. Some of us can pronounce his name, some of us cannot. He actually came from Weber County. He comes to us with 4 years of service. Over here we have Daniela Anderson. She comes from the Utah State Prison. And then sitting down right here, go ahead and stand up for me, Brooke. We have Brooke Klebe, and she comes to us from Weber County.
Perfect.
So we'd like to welcome them all aboard. I'm hearing some good things, so we'll get them trained, get them out there. And I just learned yesterday that we actually got an application, and if we can hire this individual, we will be fully staffed for the first time in a couple of years. So we're looking forward to that.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Good to
Yeah,
have you.
Okay. Well, we appreciate this. This is a great moment, and we do appreciate all that you do, and surely the public safety component of what you provide to the city. The people probably more than anything else, to be honest with you, really strongly appreciate the police force in this city. They've been such an important part of our community, and I'll tell you, for those of you who may have been relatively new, you won't find a finer city where people really do care about you and what you provide. So please, anytime they knock on your door, and Matt can testify to this, and say, we'd like to provide you something, okay? Take advantage of it. They don't do it because they have to. They do it because they respect what you do and how you make a big difference in this community. And so even though you may not necessarily like the donuts and all the other treats, accept them, and then we'll find somebody else to eat them. But thanks for all you do. We can't be more pleased. Thank you. Okay, we do have ordinance number 21-12. Steve, you're going to kind of talk us through this part, and the council's get my comments.
Morgan, can you?
Okay, we're trying to get the information presented on the board. There it comes. Okay.
Okay. As mentioned, this is ordinance 21-12, and it's the amending of the zoning ordinance, which is Title 10. We're looking at amending Chapter 6, Chapter 10, Chapter 13, and Chapter 17. This is one of those items that we've been discussing for several weeks now. A few meetings.
Since April.
Since April.
That's
so
several months.
I won't go in specifics, details of each of the tables that I'm kind of going through. 17, I guess I'll talk about the few things that are new. Chapter 6, reason is that identifies what the zones are and kind of identifies them by their name, and then has a description. So that's why Chapter 6 is there. Chapter 10 and 17 are because we're getting rid of the old business park zoning type, and then this would also include a new business park zoning. So we're kind of removing it from one and adding it to another. Even though it's the same name, it's a completely different zone. And then ordinance 21-13 is the rezoning of properties. And the map kind of includes what those are. So the red lines going kind of flat are the Station North. The blue stars are Station Central. The green going up and down is Station South. Then the new business park is in the orange. And the reason for the yellow is because the library and school were part of the old business park. Because we're getting rid of that, it does need to have a zoning, and R18 is what's north and south and west of it, and those uses are allowed in that zone, so it just made sense to make that part of that. So that'd be my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Council. I know you've been reading through this. Do we have any comments, questions, anything we'd like to add to the ordinance and part of the conversation? So, and I know, Councilmember Wilson, you had some things you sent to him. Thank you for doing that. It allowed the council to look through that, make sure they kind of understand what you're thinking you'd like to do. So please, if you want to start, go ahead and start with your ideas.
All right, I'll do that. Thank you, Mayor. As I reviewed the discussion points that were summarized from the town hall that we had with the citizens, I realized there were two really important points that have yet to be maybe fully addressed, and that's part of where I'd like to start. One was they were very concerned with the loss of community and small-town feel, the impersonal urban environment feel of it, the transient population, and that townhomes were definitely much more acceptable than anything else for the residential area. And so with that, I would like to start with the first point I brought up was building types. The first point is actually not specifically related to the town hall, but I believe that we should allow business-type buildings in the business park, which would allow a limited bay and a large format. They may never need to use them, but I believe the option should be available. And I can take this point by point. We can discuss it as point by, is that the way you'd prefer,
However
Mayor,
you'd
then?
like. Yeah, you
Okay.
got the floor, however
All
you'd like
right.
to do it.
So maybe we can just start with that first point. And does anyone have a feeling, concern about that? I just thought it might be a nice addition, and if they need to use it, then it's there to be used. Because Business Park is possibly could need some of those things.
So I guess the comment on the table would be, as Councilmember Wilson's suggesting is that add all of the business, both large format and limited bay, to the business park and let the developer choose.
Are there any concerns
concerns with
with that or
that?
comments?
Okay, Steve, you see any problems with that proposal? Okay. Then, are we okay with that then, to go ahead and include that as a modification to the document?
Yep.
Everybody okay with that? I'm seeing head nods, everybody, okay?
Yes.
Want a motion on that?
No, we don't, we'll go for the motion once we get it all tied together, okay? So we've got consensus to go ahead and make that move. Go ahead, Diane?
The second area was, it had been written that general stoop building had been omitted. We had talked about that a few times, and I just didn't notice that omission on the table, so I guess I'm just asking Steve. I guess that's pretty easy. We can just take that off the permitted use, because my understanding that had already been discussed and decided upon.
I don't recall, but my memory doesn't remember what I did yesterday, so
Okay.
if the three of them up there want to just remove it, I can remove it live, so to speak.
I believe this goes along with what we had discussed earlier. The citizens really don't want any of this development, but if they have to have some of, they're willing to give, and townhomes they were able to tolerate, but they did not want to. The general stoop would definitely not fit in with that of what they'd like, and I think that the density would still be there. Townhomes would be very appropriate. This is a very residential area, and so for the South Station area, I think that's very appropriate because it blends better with the current residential. Any other ideas or concerns with that?
Everybody okay with that? Do you see any
Does
reason?
that still fit with our general plan, Steve? I mean,
Current?
it fits within what the direction we're
Current general
going.
plan just is looking for mixed use, so multifamily, stuff like that. If it's just townhomes or if it's apartment, it doesn't specify. So if you remove general stoop, will it hurt? I don't know. That will depend on, developers that are coming in, but that's really up to you guys.
You okay?
Yep.
Ann, you have any problem with that?
No.
You okay? Joe?
Can you pull up the map again? So I just want to look at Station South, just to make sure
As in the zoning map?
well, so whatever would call out Station South.
It's the, it's the green bars. If you have the other map, it shows it
Here,
in
I
there.
can
Yeah, I
do
just,
this. If you want to see it closer, it's the green area.
Yeah, it's all the green slash marks.
So just removing general stoop from that.
from the
Right.
green, yeah.
Yeah, and then it allows townhouses under row buildings, it allows townhouses to be everything in the green.
Only townhomes in the green.
Right. Brian, thoughts?
So that doesn't allow mixed use in the green.
That's already not allowed.
Yeah, we weren't looking
Okay, that's right.
for a commercial, because for the simple fact, commercial
No, I-
probably would never go in the green.
Yeah, I remember that, okay.
Yeah, we need a buffer. You okay, Brian? Okay, we agreed to that? Okay, go ahead, Diane, continue.
The next item I'd like to discuss is setbacks. I believe this is a very important detail that shouldn't be brushed off because it affects the entire feeling of the development. It allows for more beautification, which is an important part of our city. It allows for more of the community feel, and where this is in the middle and center of a very residential area, it's just a small bit of that. It helps increase the inclusiveness. When you have a little more, you have more warmth and inviting. When you take a look at the way people describe things, when it's too close to the road, it is a little less inviting. And so I recommend that we change it to 15-foot minimum setbacks and not allow a 0-foot setback. And I've already typed up some of the other concerns. Just for the actual concrete concerns, it limits options and flexibility for future situations. For example, if there's not a bike lane there now, then it could be something that could be added, or if there have to be transportation changes, if there's infrastructure or other problems. A little more of a setback allows that without, having to destroy an entire building. And so I believe that that's a very important detail that should be considered, especially the location of this. This is in the middle of a residential community area, and I think lends itself to that feeling.
Okay. Council, any comments? This would be a minimum 15-foot setback. Okay, on
Steve has a,
The reason why
Comment?
it's set up this way is, again, yes, it is surrounded by single family, but this is a community in the middle of a community. We're trying to make a different feel here than elsewhere in the city. Downtown has the same setbacks, and it will, again, be a community amongst the community. You go to Farmington Station, you make it a 15-foot setback, forget most of that, because they can't build the buildings where they are next to the sidewalk. So again, this was the reason for a 0 to 15, is to give the developers an option of how they want to space those buildings away from a public road. This has nothing to do if it's a private road, but that's the reason why it was there. Again, to make it a different feel than a suburban subdivision that has 25, 30-foot setbacks.
when you still have right of way and curb and gutter and sidewalk.
Correct.
So it would depend on the developer when he comes in. We wouldn't know till,
Right, I mean,
Amen.
right now, Sandridge Drive, or it could be 2675 if it ever goes through, is the only public road right now. So it'd be 0 to 15 feet off of that. The other ones, in between buildings could be private roads, and we don't have this wouldn't affect that.
Well, in regards to that urban feel, I believe that the majority of the people that came to the town hall were okay with having a little bit of that urban increase in density, but we're sure hoping to be able to keep a little better transition. And part of that is the beautification and the feel, as well as the other things. So I believe that follows what their intent or what their desires were, as well as some of the other more logistical features.
but if we left it how it is, I mean, if we don't change it, does that mean you wouldn't vote for it? Or is this a change that you have to have in order to pass this?
Correct. Yeah.
That's correct.
The discussion today would be is that if you agree or want to modify, then the agreement would be is when we go for the vote today, you're agreeing to the current plus the changes being recommended and approved. That'll be the change, okay?
Steve,
Other
Steve,
comments?
the question I heard from Councilmember Wilson is, what about upcoming possible infrastructure? Particularly, I heard a bike lane, which would be very important to that type of a community, I would think.
Right.
So how do we allow for that?
Well, I mean, it's just like a public road now. If we have a subdivision that comes in and has their 60-foot right-of-way, which includes curb, gutter, and sidewalk, we as a city don't look at it and say, oh, well, in 20 years, we might tear those homes down to build a walkway. I mean, 5600 South is a great example. It's 80-foot wide right now, and they need 120.
But for public safety, would we be concerned about people
No, 'cause
commuting, let's say bicycle commuting from any particular development in that area
right.
to the train station.
But I have a feeling the developer will take that into account in his development.
Well, that's a feeling. We're not.
Well, I can't answer that question because I don't know what the developer would come and bring. He may say, you know, let's widen the sidewalks to 8 feet rather than 4, get rid of the park strip, and then all of a sudden you've got this wider walkway. Or he might put it in between the buildings or put it down by the tracks, or, I mean, it's really hard to say where that would be when we don't have an idea of how it would develop.
I guess from my perspective, it would be easier to make that almost a requirement as we zone it.
To book bike paths?
Well, to make it a wider setback, to allow for that
That's
possibility.
up to you guys.
So, I mean, the whole corridor is a narrow corridor anyway. 15's a bit of a stretch because that narrows what you can develop. I mean, I might go somewhere in the middle, maybe 5 to 10. I don't think I'd go for as far as 15, knowing that they're going to have a hard time developing on some of those parcels. Because if you knock out 15 feet, and then you get into, you've got grade issues.
A 10-foot would allow for some of that type of development, though, I believe.
Well,
I might like that change.
But the option of 0 to 15 gives the developer the ability to decide how he wants to develop.
But he could decide it at 0, is my concern.
But then he would limit himself for bike paths and stuff like that.
so
He would, but we could make that not as much of an option.
that's
if we-
correct. So if you basically said that 0 is not really the right answer,
Could we
you
make
may
it
say
5?
5, you may say 10, but you're setting some requirement they have to operate under.
Well, 5 wouldn't give you much of an option for doing anything other than a wider sidewalk, really.
5 would give you a bike path.
Right.
Would it?
Well, you've already got a 4-foot sidewalk, 5 feet from property line would give you a 10-foot walkway.
I don't like a 4-foot sidewalk though, because I don't want them to ride their bikes on a sidewalk
that's
if
what
I'm walking on it.
That's what exists now, would be a 4-foot sidewalk.
But if I want them to also have the access of a bike, I don't want it to be on the sidewalk, would be my preference.
I'm just saying if you added the 2, because I could take the sidewalk and add another foot, I'm at property line, and then go another 5, I've got a 10-foot sidewalk,
So,
bike path, or whatever you want to call it. But, I mean,
My preference would still be the 10-foot. I think that doesn't limit
So-
your developer.
Limited to 10 feet or 10 to 15 feet? What are you suggesting?
10
so-
to 15.
So I'm
I mean,
hearing
that would be my preference.
solution where will be a recommendation would be is change it from 0 to 15, change it to 10 to 15.
well, just say minimum. If you're going to go that far, just say a minimum of 10, and then it doesn't matter.
That's fine.
Right.
Could be fine
I
too.
would
They're
be
they're not
fine
going to
with
go
that.
farther back.
Right.
No.
Okay.
now, is that for all building types and in all 4 zones?
Well,
Or
and
just
that
in
brings
the
up a
3
good
next to
point
the
because
station?
everything we're talking about is trying to enhance this primarily, okay, in terms of the residential component. But we've also included this in here, the business park. Is there a reason why we would want to put 10, 15-foot minimum on that? Because, be honest with you, the fact that it bumps up against 1900, which is a UDOT road, if you read the text, it already says it has to have a 15-foot setback. So anything that butts in 1900 has to go back 15 feet to meet the UDOT's requirement. So the point would be is, do you even want to include the business park component to this?
Probably not,
I
because I
believe-
think that's,
Well, we don't
For
need to.
storefront, I think for storefront, it would, if you're going to have a home, then I think it would be nice. But if you're going to have a storefront, then I don't think it needs to be included because it's business.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, and that makes sense to me. For business, it's a different thing.
So you
altogether.
could basically leave the storefronts and leave the business park components the way they are. But if it deals with row houses or it deals with general
Townhomes.
stoop
In the business park area.
in the business, but then it would require the 10 to 15. Everything else stays as.
But what I'm
as written.
hearing is all the zones but the business park for the row homes and stuff, 10 to 15. Business park is still 0 to 15.
Minimum of 10.
Yeah,
10 to
I think the
15.
minimum of 10 is fine. We
Oh,
don't have
just
to go
10?
10
Yeah,
to
just
15.
minimum of 10.
Minimum of 10.
10 only. not
Okay.
okay.
Everybody
So
okay with that?
not that it's a set 10, but it's a minimum of 10. So they can go wider if they want to, but they don't have to. So a
Okay.
minimum of 10.
Brian, you have any thoughts on that? Okay. Everybody seemed to be comfortable? Okay, go ahead, Diane.
And then I was noting that we had made the parking change in the row building area, and it looked to me like there were just a couple of areas that probably needed changed. And what do you think about that, Steve? It looked like on the table, there was an area where we probably should delete it, as I noted, and then there's a paragraph that probably needs to be changed in the description.
Sorry, I'm trying to live change this, so I know what.
And while you're doing that, someone, Mayor, you had mentioned something about City Council having oversight a week or two ago. And I know that that was a concern at the town hall meeting. How does the City Council have oversight? I know that there are limitations because once certain things are put in, we have no oversight.
Correct.
And I was just wondering, while Steve's looking that up, what ideas were you referring to when you said that maybe we could at least maintain a little bit of City Council oversight on some of this? Because that was a very important point brought up at the town hall.
Well, it's a good point. I guess you have to kind of ask yourself, your question, council, is it technically you can go up there and simply says every development has to take place through the council. Now, let me just make sure you understand what I just said. You've taken the planning commission, which is what their role and responsibility is, a land use authority. You take them out of the conversation. The only thing they can do is offer us a recommendation. Or you can set the policy as legislators, and you can simply says, here's the policy, and then you allow the city and the planning commission to do their function. That's typically how it works. And there's some legal issues that we got into about 5 or 6 years ago where we were advised by the leagues that simply says a lot of cities went to court in large part because, and were basically held responsible for damages in large part because the decision was a political decision and not necessarily a statute position. And that's what can happen if, in fact, you're driven by politics or public opinion. Planning Commission doesn't make that decision. They don't make policy decisions. You make policies. They simply carry out. And as long as it meets the standard of that, then that's it. But let me just make sure you understand. If the council says they want to basically control this or any other development, you simply write it in the statute. You have that authority. Steve, comment.
Two things. You're correct on the aspect of cities have been sued when the city council's the deciding factor, because then you get 30 people in the audience that are saying no to this, no to this. But in an administrative action, you have no choice to say anything but yes. If you say no, you find yourself in court, and many cities have found that. So the league really taught the cities and directed the cities to change those, to give them to an administrative body, planning commission. The second thing is you would have to change a few other chapters that aren't on the table tonight in order to change how things are reviewed and approved.
Right.
So even if you would like to have some sort of oversight, tonight's not the night to look at that because it's not one of those chapters we're looking at.
Yeah, it'd have to go through the process, but just so you understand what I'm saying to you is, council, this body, as a legislative body, controls everything. Everything. As long as you
If we
don't
don't like zoning and ordinance, we just change it.
you change it.
But we make it what we want, and then they vet it against what we make.
I think that's a better process than allowing this body
I mean,
to
I've
vet
sat through the Lula
decisions.
courses twice at ULCT, once from a standpoint of a city planning commission and against a council, and they're two totally different functions. I mean, we set the rules and ordinances, they make sure that they're being followed.
That's the way it works. But I just want to make sure you understand. Maybe here's the best way I can define that. Ross is not here, so I won't embarrass him. If this council basically said, I want to have a city council member run the public works department, you have the authority to do that.
But it needs to be done in policy rather than,
Exactly.
Then
And this body
on a
would have to
day-by-day
approve that
basis.
in a policy statement. That's the point I want to drive home here. What do you want to do? And the point is, once you open that door just recognize that there's a lot of work involved, but as a city council, as the legislative body of this organization, you make the laws. All we're saying is, it's going to deviate dramatically, okay, outside of the norm, and then you have to be very careful, and I think Andy can talk to us from legal perspective. You have to be consistent, because if you're not consistent with everyone the same way all the time, then they have a right to come back and sue the city for damages. And the league has, I sat through a 2-hour meeting on this where we went through, and Steve helped me here, there were 26 pages of documents that had to be changed in Roy City, and all of those were changed in Roy City to get us so that the council keeps itself on the legislative side and the administrative side functions based on what laws you passed. So it's a very complicated process, but Councilman Wilson's comment is right. You choose. I'm just
Well,
telling
I
you.
believe
you
that, that explanation is very good for those people that were possibly interested in it, and they had kind of referenced when you had brought it up again, and I didn't know of any other way besides what you mentioned, so I think that answers the question for them, and I think they'll understand it fine.
I think that's typical in any type of a legislative
Yes.
situation that,
Well, at any one time, if we don't like something, we change it.
yeah, we set the policy,
That's right.
they administer the policy.
Exactly. That's how it works.
Thank you. That way it's on, so everyone can hear that.
So I think that the question on the table right now, Steve, is the issue talking about road building parking change. Is changing,
It was the second paragraph of 8A.
Yes.
I think to answer your
Okay.
question, because, here it talks about rear yard, parking in the rear, but it also has, however, if the garage is located within the building, a minimum level of occupied space is required on the front facade, they can do that. So with our changes in the table to allow rear, front, and side, I don't think we're in violation of the 2 paragraphs.
That's sufficient.
Yeah.
And then if you look up higher at that first part where it talks about permitted fully in basement and in the rear, do we need to change that by chance by just crossing that off? I don't know if you, and I don't know what number it is, but it's under parking in the table, and I
Oh,
can.
you're in the table now.
In the table,
Sorry.
that's
I'm looking
under.
in the wording here going, I don't see that.
It's on, so it's the
Required
row building.
occupied space?
It is on the parking within building. It says parking within building, permitted fully in basement and in rear of all floors. And so as long as that, because it sounds like you could have it fully in the basement, but if you require rear of all floors, that may just have a little bit of a,
And we can
Mix.
put front, side, and rear.
or could you just put permitted fully in basement and cross off that last bit?
That could work, too.
Okay?
that work for you? Council? The comment would be is where it states in the table, parking within building, permitted fully in basement, and then cross off the "and" at the rear of all floors. Are you okay with that?
I'd be worried about a second floor rear parking.
Well, it's one of those,
Just, it seems a little,
it's similar to what we were trying to do with downtown to get the parking on the side or the back, and that's why it was here. Because of topography, I think it works, but in some cases, it may not. I think, like down below where it's pretty flat, it might work, continue to have it in the back. But, that's neither here nor there, but to
So-
me, removing it in the rear of all floors is fine.
And would we need to, on
But-
required occupied space, do we need to have that? Because if it says 30-foot deep on all floors, then that, from the front facade, that would, I think that is in violation of that addition. What do you think about that? It's just right under parking within building.
Well, we're also got to be concerned here, are we talking about the central, which could have commercial, and now we're saying commercial's no longer in the basement or the ground floor and has a requirement of needing to be 30 feet
That's on
deep?
row buildings, and so maybe, it still depends on
No,
slope.
Never mind. We're in
So
row
it's under row
buildings.
buildings.
That's fine, we can remove those two.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Council,
you.
what's your thoughts on that? You okay with those changes?
30-foot deep.
Okay, so we approve those 2 changes.
Like I said, I can't remember what I did yesterday.
And then the last one, just make sure I walk away from the row buildings, the parking is required slashed out. Did we agree that was okay as written? Okay, so we're okay with that, okay? This is okay. Okay, council, is there anything else you'd like to see or want to talk about relative to what's the ordinance that's in front of us today?
Maybe I can just have Steve clarify on that paragraph, why, how is that all right? And I'm okay with that, but just explain to me why, where it says parking is required to be located in the rear yard, why is it okay to leave that, or should we just cross off part of that? Maybe we don't have to cross off the whole paragraph, but just maybe,
Because the next sentence, however, if need, it could be in the front because of topography.
however, within the garage, it's located within a building, a minimum of level occupied is required on the front facade. I think that says the
To ensure
same
the
thing.
street facade is active.
Right, so I think that, what if you just put parking may be incorporated either into a detached garage? What if you just crossed off is required to be located in the rear yard? Because then I think it's very clear. And then the rest doesn't even have to be changed.
Comments? Council?
Does that give them an option, Steve?
I'm a little confused on where I'm putting what.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
So if you look at the second paragraph, it says parking is required to be located in the rear yard. What if you just take out is required to be located in the rear yard? What if you just put parking may be incorporated and take out those few words? Because then I think it's very clear. And then it would just say parking may be incorporated either into a
Where is this
detached
not?
garage. And that way I don't think it's having any conflict.
Comments?
Okay, I'm fine with that. Does that still give them an option that they might want?
Right, that allows them an option if we take out the rear. Yep, that right there.
It's maybe.
Some of my hesitation is, I don't know, because when this document was written, it comes from American Planning Association, so it's kind of been vetted through a process, and as we amend things, I don't know how things work. So ours hasn't necessarily been vetted and changed. Will it work? Most likely. If it doesn't, I'll come back and tell you we need to change it.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Is this kind of the line you want to get rid of?
I
Yeah.
think that takes care of it.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
parking may be incorporated, and just take out the comment, or the lettering says is required to be located in the rear yard.
Okay.
Just take that portion out, okay? So remove that, everything else stays intact.
Do you see a problem with that, Andy?
No, I don't see a problem.
Okay.
So I think if there is, like, Steve will have the opportunity of looking at it.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay,
I think.
okay, council,
Thank you.
anything else? Any other comments, questions about the ordinance in front of you?
Can I make a motion, we approve it and move on?
Okay, I got a motion now to approve ordinance number 21-12, and I assume you're going to tell us approve it based on the recommended changes.
Yes. I make a motion, we approve the ordinance based on the recommended changes that have been discussed tonight.
I second that.
And I'll third it.
You third it?
So-
Okay, this is a roll call vote, and I'm not so sure. Morgan, she's there.
Yeah,
You
she's
hid from me. Please.
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, council. With that, we needed to get that one done so we can go to ordinance 21-13, which is amending the zoning map, as well as a couple other things in terms of changes needed to be adjusted. Steve, you want to just emphasize or just tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll go for that motion.
I don't have access to the map anymore, but
Oh.
it's just changing, you got Station North, Station South.
Yeah.
Station Central, and then the business park, and then changing the school and library from business park to R18.
Yep, that's it, okay? And it's that map right there. What you're doing is you're approving that map,
Yeah,
Right.
all right? And,
Yep, that one there.
okay. Council, any comments or questions about the map?
No.
Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion then to approve ordinance 21-13 to amend the zoning map?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
okay, let me get this down. Brian, and, okay, thank you. Well, this is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Perfect. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, council, we are, just want to have a just brief discussion. It isn't in the packet, but there was, I sent it to you, that looks at a draft of the Ogden Weaver Scholarship, Ogden Weaver Tech College Scholarship. Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the latest we received is they'd like to advance that to a one-year scholarship. So instead of just being a 6-month, it's now a one-year scholarship.
That's awesome.
So that's going to be a great addition, but they've asked us as a council to select a member of Roy City to be the recipient of that. Now, in the draft that we sent you, we got some good input. We've hopefully made some adjustments, but obviously we want to finalize this. Based on the information you've read in this latest copy of a draft, is there any other adjustments you'd like to see made in that particular document? And you're probably thinking is, any other comments, anything else you'd like to see before we get this finalized, and more importantly, get it out to the public so they can basically apply?
Maybe some education on the interview taking place in a formal public meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Is that pretty much a mandated sort of thing? Because I'm sure it's going to be intimidating and.
Andy, I think all the interviews that I have ever been in, typically they're public interviews.
I believe so. We're gonna make a decision as a financial.
I think the question to answer that, though, Councilwoman Wilson, would be that an interview would be much less intimidating than some of the prior questions.
That's correct.
And it would be less limiting to who would apply. I think if we allow them to tell their story, whether in public or in a small-based interview, either one would be more conducive to getting the right applicants and the right final selection.
So my question, Mayor, before we decide on this, there's no financial implication to the city. This is all granted through, so I don't want to sound bad, but we're not allocating city funds.
No.
We're allocating. So based on it not being city funds, does it have to be a public meeting?
What I'll do, I'll look into that to make sure, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy, but
Based on that fact, I think he's correct with that, so.
either way, I think it would be less intimidating than
Let
some
me
of,
make sure
yeah,
that we do that correctly.
Well, and that gives a
I
good
want
point.
them to tell their story. I
Yeah.
want, whether it's in public
But I
or
don't want them to
whether
have
it's
to
in
tell
a
their
small.
story right there in front of
Right.
us
Yeah.
and Jesus and the whole world.
Well, but I think, Jan, what you're alluding to is the fact is that it really comes down to the kind of question you're going to ask them to answer.
Yeah.
And if it's a general statement that simply says, please take a moment and tell your story, and they take 3 or 5 minutes, how long you decide to tell their story, then if that's how you as a council member feel like you'd like to make an interview happen, make it happen that way.
But I think it's fine if they choose to tell private information, that's their choice. Or if they choose
Yeah.
not to, then they
They
may
don't
or
have
may
to.
not limit their
You're absolutely correct.
selection.
So, go ahead. Anything else? Because I need to sit down with Matt and Morgan. We need to get this thing finalized so we can get it
I'm
posted.
fine with it as written.
Me too.
Okay. Everybody okay? Okay, then Morgan, we'll get with Matt when he gets in. We'll get this finalized and get it in the bulletin, or in the Connect magazine, so we can get that going. Perfect.
For anybody listening, I hope they are very much looking forward to that. That is a great opportunity, and I hope we advertise it widely.
Exactly. Yeah, and please make sure you get the word out to everybody you know. I'd like to make sure that we.
It's going to be if I understand it correctly, it's not a one-time, it's a perpetual scholarship.
I hope so. That would be lovely if
I
it
can't
were.
answer. All I know is what Morgan and I was provided would be it's a 50th anniversary. And with the 50th anniversary, they're going to give them a one-year scholarship to whoever this council chooses to be the recipient.
I wouldn't be surprised, though, because they are very, very community-minded. They are very public service-oriented, so
And allow them to continue.
particularly if we make a good selection
There you go.
and benefit somebody very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And we can surely try to advocate that. Perfect. Okay, we have a discussion item. Perfect. Now we want to go to the city manager and council report. So Andy, anything you want to share with
Mayor,
us?
the city manager is out of town. He was hoping he could be back in time tonight. I got a call from him this morning. They delayed the flight at least an hour and a half at that time. So he's not going to be here tonight. He did send me an email of something that he wanted to present to the council, and I'm going to read that to you. Maybe that'll be the best. Said we're going to be participating in the 5K run walk. And Craig, I'm going to ask you to help me out with this too. We've contacted Clinton and North Davis, and they'll be there at the start and maybe at the ending, depending on the calls we receive. Also, Weber Remembers has a schedule of events they are doing and participating in those events. And we'll participate in everything we can. It looks like our participation will be mostly on the 11th. Is that right, Craig? And you might, if you could explain to them, the council, what our participation will be.
So everything from the Brent Taylor Foundation that's doing the Weber Remembers, as well as what's already planned for within all the other public safety entities throughout the state. Roy is actively involved in most of those. And we start that out at 6:46 on Saturday morning here, but we're also having events for Weber Remembers, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. Also, there will be multiple events that'll be happening to those, as well as a statewide day of service on the 11th as well. So a lot of activities, a lot of things going on, both Davis and Weber County. Almost every day of that week, something's happening, and requests for services are there. We are participating in everything that we can with limited. That's why we've reached out, since it's a Tri-City event for the day of service. We actually are getting Clinton and North Davis involved to help out with at least the start, so that we can actually do our annual event to get it started and then actually support that. But there's so many events. If anybody wants to be involved, and they don't know what to be involved in, they can contact anybody in public safety, and you can say what can be done, besides bringing donuts. So, got plenty of those. So, is that good enough?
That's much better than what I had from the email.
Thank you, Chief.
Which wasn't clear at all.
Yeah, because
So-
it's the food drive, the blood drive will be after 9/11. No, it's going to be at the library, I think, September 8th. I think they finally got it. And then the food drive and all the big banners are going to be out this week, and we'll start getting all the word out of all the activities. And then the cleanup is on 9/11, and the 5K run is on 9/11.
Okay.
So lots of stuff.
Yeah, please try to get the information out to us. And by the way,
Yeah.
Chief, I'm going to make an observation here. I would assume that you would probably like the council to join you at the 9:46 a.m. September 11th morning demonstration.
6:46.
Or excuse me,
Six.
6:46.
You gotta get out of bed earlier, Mayor.
Yeah, usually.
Of course, I've seen your emails. I know what time you get out of bed.
He looks at the clock.
Or maybe it's what time he goes to bed.
Yeah, that's
I don't
probably
think
real
he
problem.
does.
But yes, the invite's gonna be there, and we'll try to do events, something going on all day at the station, so that people can walk up and interact if they want to as well.
I just think, as I remember the event you put in this station up here on 1900, that's an incredible demonstration, illustration of the event. And it really kicks off, I think, the whole issue about, and I won't call it celebration because we can't celebrate what happened, but we can surely recognize what happened on 9/11. And I think your team does an incredible job for Roy City and everybody who drives by, seeing exactly that we in Roy City recognize the significance of what happened and will not forget. And I think, Council, would you consider joining us? I know it's 9:46. I think
6:46.
I know it's 6:46.
9:46, I
I
come
put
for sure.
6:46. If you can be there, I think that'd be a lot of fun. Okay,
So at the fire station, 6:46.
6:46.
On September 11th.
on September 11th. Okay, and that's a Saturday.
Question,
Please.
are the pins done?
I know Matt and Morgan. Any idea on that yet?
We haven't received them.
Okay. I know they're in work. We'll do a follow-up on that. And these are the pins, the 9/11 pins that we talked about, and that we were going to get those to all the public safety people. So we'll do an action item to find out exactly the status. Thank you for reminding us.
Mayor, I also shared something on Facebook today that was shared by the Major Brent Taylor Foundation that had a list of events. So it's been shared on our Facebook page if anybody wants to share it.
And the 9/11 is going to be in the, you got it in the magazine, right?
The connection was
The-
they actually live next to Jenny Taylor, so they already have a full article for it.
The
And they'll be
stuff
sharing
that I gave you too, it was the exact same, I mean, the,
same information
oh,
that
the
I got.
Clinton, Roy, and West Point,
Okay,
all that stuff, okay.
perfect. So we got a big event all that week and on that Saturday. So we'll get the information out to you. And if you can, put it on your calendar. And Joe, just do me one favor. Call me at 6:30 a.m. and just remind me. I surely don't want to be sleeping.
Based on
through
the
that.
fact I've got a wedding that day, that might be the only event I get to.
Did you see why I asked him to call me? Because I know he's got a wedding
gonna
on
be
that
up.
day, and he had to set priorities. I understand. Okay, council, do you have anything you'd like to share?
One thing I wanted to bring up, I posted on Facebook. For those of you that follow the community blessing box that's here behind the municipal building in Memorial Park, there's been a new one put up. It's more of a pantry now versus a blessing box. The old one's still there. It will be removed and repositioned down by the southwest corner of the Public Works. The box and all the stuff that went into doing the box was either donated by residents or employees of the city. So it's a great asset to the community. I've observed and been involved in a little bit. I'm really impressed with the amount of people that try to keep it cleaned, organized, donate food to it. So I just want everybody to know that that's there. As you drive by just west of the building here, you'll see it. And then the one that it's being replaced will go down to, it'll be on the southwest sidewalk of the Public Works building, so.
Okay, great information. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
I just wanted to give a shout out, but they're not here for the great job we had for Roy Days.
Ah, good
To
point.
Jody and Travis, I texted them and told them, but, you know, I picked the music for the fireworks, and I heard, I don't look at Facebook, but my kids told me someone put on there, only one patriotic song, and someone said it wasn't the 4th of July celebration. But I thought, I watched the fireworks from Roy West, and I could see them. I thought, I heard nothing but positive comments.
Right.
Well,
on-
Public Works and Parks and Rec did an awesome job. The parade went over well.
Yeah.
The thing went over. I've got, I'll post it. I passed it on to the chief. I've got an awesome picture of Kevin Smith standing on top of the command post with fireworks blowing up in the background. and when he was standing up there, it almost looked like Mufasa looking out over the his what's the word I'm looking?
His tribe?
His pride, yeah. It was prophetic looking picture, but you know, police did an awesome job, fire did an awesome job. We didn't have the type of events that we've had last. When I say events, negative events, the
Right.
negative things that happened. I thought they kept things under control really well. I liked how the format was, multiple different locations. We
I thi-
changed things up.
I got the most conversation on that.
On the
Joe,
salmon bake.
honestly,
Yeah.
on how we spread the venues out. That
Parking was
we
a lot
heard-
better.
Yeah, salmon bake needs
Really
to be Thursday from now on at Emma Russell Park.
No, that
That's
worked
just-
great until
yeah.
the wind blew all the pop-ups over, but.
Yeah, but is
You
it the
can't
very
plan
end?
for that, no, but
That
it
would've
went really
happened
well.
anyway.
I thought the multi-venue thing worked out, multi-day, salmon bake, and unfortunately, the one show got
Rained out.
lightninged out,
Yeah.
but I think that whole format worked out great, so.
Yeah, okay,
Job to
great
Big
everybody.
shout out
comments.
to
Yeah,
whoever,
great event.
to Jody and Travis and all their employees.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't think there was an organization in Roy City government that was not involved, and so great effort on the part of everybody. And please make sure that word gets out. If you would, Andy, just one last thing. There were some great things that happened, and I think there might be some opportunities of lessons learned. Anytime you have something this big, and it's big in Roy City, may I recommend that we just do a post-assessment, maybe have whoever you'd like in the city, just send something out to the council members. We learned a lot We've seen a lot of great things that were very successful, but there were also a couple of things we might be able to make in improvements. So maybe if you just ask us to provide some feedback to the city on what we learned from this one, we can share that with you and help us to be able to do even a better job next time. So, okay. Okay, anything else, council? I've got a few things if you don't. Okay, just let me walk through these. Morgan, I ask you, could you give us a little status where we are on the city's new website?
So, excuse me, I did get an email last week. They're almost through with the migration process. So what we had to do is we had to go through into our site map and change everything that we needed changed on how the website flows, how you get to pages, how you find information. So that was quite a process. All the departments help with that. They kind of revamped how they want their portion of the website, and then I had to put it all together. Sent it over. They'll migrate over all of our current content, as well as create and help create the new pages that we wanted to create, like our victim advocate page that we've never had on our website before. So all of that is being done right now. The migration process was almost done. They'll start. They said that they would be reaching out to me last week to schedule something, but they have run into a few issues with the migration process. So hopefully in the next few weeks they'll come out and train us on how to make adjustments and edits to the website. We'll be able to build out those new pages, and then we'll be able to launch it. So the migration process has taken a lot longer than they anticipated.
Okay, great rundown. So, council, we're really close. That I think will be a great improvement. Okay. Let me talk about the park strip program. You may have been reading a little bit about that. We've been sending information out. Royce City ordinance do require a bit of adjustment, and so there'll be some that we've been in contact with the person who's running that up at the Weber Basin Water Conservative District, and so we have to make just a couple of minor modifications to it. Interesting enough, Steve's gone, but this will probably require go through the Planning Commission because it's a land use. And so we'll have to do those ordinance adjustments and make recommendations back to the council to be compliant. I share that with you because if the residents want to participate in the Flip Your Strip program that the basin is doing, then we got to make sure Royce City ordinances are in compliant to what their requirements are. Once they're done, and just a few adjustments, all it needs. Matt and I have been talking. He's been in Florida. We've been talking about it. So we'll get that ready and get that finalized and then work that part of it. But it may require an ordinance adjustment.
Mayor, was there anything in writing that, in looking at their documents, that talked about participation that we had received before, and our ordinances look like they allow it?
They
so
do.
Is there something additional?
Just a little thing that Matt found from John.
Because I just heard about that yesterday, and
It's real close.
Yeah, because I don't see
Yeah.
it in any of their documents, so I was very curious about
It's really close. He had the conversation. I asked him if he'd called John just to finalize that. They said they have just a couple little pieces they'd like to get in the ordinance to make it work.
'Cause it'd be good to see those, because our current ordinance does allow for
I know.
xeriscaping and we don't prohibit it, and we don't require a certain amount of grass.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm kind of interesting. It's
He-
interesting to
he
me.
mentioned it was
this additional
commercial.
requirement, how that plays. So I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I think you'll have that. But he did.
Then we can go, and if there's some changes we need to make, we'll do that. But
Yeah.
based on everything that I'd seen before,
We're close.
I thought
And it's only commercial.
So that would be, that's what's interesting, because wasn't the
Yeah.
program residential?
It's all.
So,
But they want to go to
but
do
they want
that.
to change in commercial.
Just want to
to
add a
make
little
it
bit something to the
residential.
commercial
Yeah,
side,
that's-
which I thought was interesting.
That's very interesting to
Yeah,
me.
because they didn't say that anywhere
Very-
in their
I'm-
documentation.
Yeah, that's very interesting to me. So I'd like to see
Okay.
what that is.
Yeah, well, Matt will be in tonight. We'll sit down with him this week and try to finalize what that is and get that back to the council so you know. But once we get that done, you will have to approve an ordinance adjustment if in fact it requires one. And if it does, you'll know then exactly what's being done. Let me just make sure a couple of things. We did receive an official letter from the Weber Basin Water Conservative District. Royce City will find it terminating the secondary water on the September 20th. That's official. That could be changed, predicated on the usage, but they're right now saying is it'll be shut off on the 20th of September. You're going to hear people from West Haven say, why are they shutting off the water in West Haven on the 1st of September? it's a different issue. They're handled by different supplier of water. And so they've already been told that the canal is going to dry up down there, I guess. So just be aware, right now that's where it sits. We did receive the official letter, and the Roy Water Conservative District voted on last Wednesday, said that they would now, 20th of September will be their shut-off day as well, okay? So just be aware of that. You're going to get asked questions. We talked about the 9/11 events. If you put on your calendar September 27th, this is the National Family Dinner Night. You may have remembered when we've been involved in those. It's a lot of fun.
They did the drive-through?
They did the drive-through, at 5:30, September 27th, at George Wallen North Park. So if you'll just kind of plan for that, they would like the council to be there to help, as we did last time, and we're going to do somewhat the same venue we did before. And they found that to be an incredibly great success. Okay, anything else, council, you'd like to talk about as part of city council?
Well, so we had talked when I complained about the red stripes, you know, the parking down there. So you guys were going to try to work something out. I mean, obviously this year we don't need to worry about, but for next spring and well, spring sports next year. So you guys had to come up with some kind of
New ordinance. We have to come up with an ordinance to do that.
Well, there was information I pushed to Matt about the cul-de-sac west of, or south of Emma Russell.
right.
Those citizens have some concern of how it went down originally and how they think it should be now. And so I think he's vetting through all that.
We will, we'll present, as soon as we get something drafted, we'll vent it through. That's not a land use issue, but it is an ordinance, and you approve all ordinances. So we'll get a draft to you, have you work with that if you need to, and then we'll bring it for a formal ordinance change. But yes, we're working on that, okay?
And then when Matt gets back, I haven't noticed any movement on our signs, our Roy City signs.
Okay, that's a good question. The entry signs both on the north and the south, okay? So we'll check the status of the signs.
I know they had to get UDOT to have people there or something, or flashers or something, so that in order to get the cement trucks in. So maybe that's what they're working on, so,
We'll find the answer to that.
yeah.
Can
Okay?
piggyback off of that, how is our sign request for I-80 going?
Actually, we haven't approached the UDOT Regional One Director on that. I'm waiting for them to hold their next meeting. Every quarter, Matt and I attend a meeting with the UDOT Director, and our intent is to bring that issue up as well as get status on the 5600.
Okay.
But it's in my calendar. I'll just make sure that we look at that. But you're asking, can we get a Roy sign on I-80? Let people know that we're out there, okay?
So I was just gonna ask Morgan, so does the Roy, the parade committee, or does anybody send Larry H. Miller thank you cards for letting us drive their really cool cars? Because it was the fulfillment of my grandson's dream to drive that car.
Was that the Corvette?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Jody's really great at
Jody
handling all
does
that,
it.
and her staff, so.
She does all that, okay.
By the way, that was a real stretch for them in a year when they have no cars.
Oh.
Yeah, my
So we need to
grandson that's in
recognize
fourth
that.
grade, when I drove him home, because I went and got my car the night before, Grandma, I'm so happy you're a councilwoman. This is the greatest day of my life that I can be in this car.
That is so funny.
I know.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. Okay, anything else? Okay, do I entertain a motion then to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, Jan, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Ann? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're now out of city council. Give us a couple seconds and we'll step into our RDA board meeting.
We don't take public comment in this meeting, do we?
That's the mayor's decision, so we can allow comments throughout the year. And we do have public hearings every now and then, that are required in our budget. Requires public hearings.
Yeah,
So, but no, we don't have a sign.
okay.
Then the city council can choose.
I just don't want to get pummeled.
Just recognize that change would then change how height is done on every project. And personally, I don't have a problem with that. If the council says, let's look about changing that wording so it's a little better. I can talk to Andy, and Andy says, yeah, he says, we can probably go ahead and
Alarming.
word that a little bit better, maybe make it a little stronger, maybe a little clarification, that's fine too. But you can get that process moving. More than likely will move, could be done long before there's any development that's taking place.
Ours goes all night when the battery goes
But
dead.
the key would be is it wouldn't wait a long time.
Ours is
You just never know when it's gonna move, it can move on, let it go. But once it's changed, then it's changed for every development, okay? Wherever it is, and if it makes sense, that's how it's going. A recommendation from the planning commission says,
don't
not
do
so, we
that.
gotta do this, then it's done. And then every development will be measured from that same reference point. That's how it approaches. I didn't want your husband to walk out and
We
say,
have
he says
a-
we ignored that.
like a-
It just sets a different function.
I told Gary, I'm putting
You can, in this situation,
We
go
have an
ahead,
intruder alarm
come up
that's
with
in
some
every
recommendations.
room
You
in
did that
our
in the last
house.
meeting.
And
Present
it's
that to
got
the
lights
council
and
and say
stuff.
with the recommendation
I
that
want
we
that
forward these
out of the
recommendations
house.
to the
We've
planning
never,
commission
we've
with
never
clarifying or
enabled
improving
it,
the
and if
different
the alarm, I mean, if the electricity goes
That'll be
out,
the task to
you
run
gotta
the
jump
public
up
meetings.
and in the middle of the night, push the mute button 3 times. Or if the battery on it goes out, it goes off every 20 seconds.
It's supposed to be a severe thunderstorm warning came out.
It's a disaster.
Came out at like at 6 o'clock and said it was about
Is it
30,
raining
40
yet?
minutes.
It was on my way
No, it's
here,
supposed to.
just sprinkling.
There's
So I kind of went with that.
it may, a lot of wind. They said there's supposed to be 70-mile-an-hour winds with it.
Light color. My kids are.
And
You're
with
gonna
his
hate it. You're gonna hate it.
input
I had
and
the
your
whole deck
input,
of paint
then
things
just
going
present
last
that
night.
back
I
to
thought, maybe
council.
I'll choose something
But it was
else.
coming from
I had
Magna.
this one strip that I figured out last year, and I showed it to Heather.
And then we simply says,
Coming
like
from
this
Magna.
conversation,
And
here's
so
some
then
input
I
we've
kept
got.
it
We got it from
aside
Andy,
because I was
we
gonna do
got
this
some
last
input
year.
from
So then I had to go through
then
all
we'd
of
like
those
to
strips and
task
kept
finder.
trying this color, putting them in the countertop.
Yeah.
Flush that out.
And she goes, no, Mom.
I won't.
Back to
Pull
you
that
with
one.
the
It's up to you guys.
Come back to the council.
Say, what
with
about this?
recommendations,
Long you
what they-
debate.
what they'd like to see. And
I'm
it's just a
always
matter of
good.
us voting.
You said you needed it last year.
It'll
So
My
I-
life's
every-
I was
pretty
just painting
okay.
my whole ceiling and painted my back doors and.
Okay,
So
so
I
just
told
to
him,
clarify,
"Don't
I'll work it out the best I can with my research, review it with Andy.
My son next to work for him.
Okay.
Leave Gary
With
alone.
the
Not,
intent of
well,
wanting to get
Chase,
council to correct that.
my son, my son
So-
has.
Land use change.
Okay.
What I'm asking to have
Yes.
done, and I'm having some
All right.
pretty extensive stuff
I think that
done.
would be a
But
good approach.
All right,
it's,
All
appreciate
new
that.
floors.
I don't
new
mean to
cabinets.
sound coy, but it's just
$2,000
money.
less than what I paid for the house. Entirely. The land, the roof, the second floor.
Which one?
I don't know. It's through my,
Out of the woods.
That's what he said.
Into the woods.
I don't know.
Well, it's one of them woods
Saying to
things.
myself,
Into the
It's-
woods, out of the woods. I don't
it's
know.
through
this
the
conversation.
remodeler hired him. I don't know.
Well,
I gotta go
I
look at the
can't
design.
afford to do all that, but I did get new countertops 2 years ago. And then I just put new hardware on my cabinets. But then it's gone that late, and they're such nice, heavy-duty, good cabinets. I might
I'm not
paint them
sure
one
I
day.
want,
And I'm
When
like,
he
I'm
told
not
me
sure
that
I
because
hate
he's
my cabinet. And they said, but to take them out,
What this thing is
they'll get
only doing
destroyed.
with
You guys are gonna miss
I'm,
me.
I'm
I hate
I've
to,
been there and all
Deep
my
down,
He says, okay.
you'll
Used
go,
to be a paint job,
where is that
and
painting
Amazon
is done?
countertops.
Somebody says, what happened in that meeting?
You just bring a different perspective. It's not a pain in the butt. It's
Completely different.
a different perspective.
It
I've been
is,
with teachers all day yesterday and all day today.
but
We have a fairly diverse council from
And Janice Christensen.
a lot of different walks of
Today.
life.
She was the same.
you guys will
So
do
do
a
you,
great
is that just
job.
part of your being your school board job?
I just
I don't
wanted to
have
get
to
your
do
point
it,
of
but
view.
I was
So,
at the
I
wanna- yeah,
practices
that's why I'm-
conference those 2 days.
Let's see the dog.
Looks like,
Exactly.
wow.
I just am so committed to it.
That's,
What's so
this,
funny,
I don't know,
Jennifer
comes
was
through out.
She is getting rid of over 500 books in her library. She goes, Mom,
Okay.
I have them checked out. for
That's
25
Orem.
years."
Sheets of rain.
I mean,
Where at?
Orem.
she ordered all the new books.
At what time was the meeting scheduled to start? 6 o'clock?
6:30.
Perfect, okay. I just want to make sure.
You awake?
I am.
We can't basically
Start early.
start it early, but we surely can have, in this case, start it late.
If it's coming our way, one of my employees just sent a video of what's going on in Orem sheets of rain.
Uh-oh.
It's raining sideways.
We should,
Okay.
we should try to avoid that.
Okay.
Advisory
Good,
for strong
'cause-
winds and rain tonight. for the next
Wow.
24 hours.
It's supposed, yeah,
Okay.
it's supposed to rain tomorrow and Thursday.
I just want to watch my window well.
We're up in time for the football game
Well,
tonight.
okay,
Let's
well,
go.
obviously we better jump in then, okay? So I want to welcome everybody. It is now 6:42 to the Roy City RDA Board Meeting Agenda for August 17th, 2021. We are meeting in the Roy Chambers, Roy City Council Chambers. We'd like to recognize we have Board Member Paul, we have Board Member Jackson, we have Board Member Wilson, we have Board Member Burrell, and we have Board Member Saxton joining us tonight. We do have one consent item, board members. It's the approval of the June 15, 2021 Roy City RDA meeting minutes. Do we have any comments or questions about those minutes? Okay, hearing none. Do I then have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
So moved.
Okay, so the consent items, we haven't approved them. From Diane, thank you. Do I have a second?
No, you
Please.
go
I'll second it.
Okay, Ann, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
ahead.
Any opposed? Hearing none, those consent items are approved. Thank you. We do have an action item, and then we have a discussion item, but I think I've switched that up a little bit from my worksheet here. We do have it. You should have seen an updated version of this. We wanted to talk about economic strategic plan and goals. And then as a discussion item, then we want to have a discussion item dealing with the review of the Roy City Development Agency guidelines. So we'll talk to those, separate those two, and then we get two action items. So with that, Randy, let's go ahead and we'll step into the economic strategic plan and goals.
Okay, Morgan, is the TV's on?
There we go.
Thank you. So what we wanted to do tonight was quickly go through with you the Economic Development Strategic Plan, kind of what it is, where we are, but particularly we want to talk about some of the goals. We really feel like we need to have the board's input on the goals that I'd be part of this plan as we move forward. So first of all, quickly, the mission and purpose of this plan. We want to provide direction for moving forward with our economic development program of Roy City. It'll assist the city in accomplishing their vision and mission statement. As you recall, when you met with and you had your strategic planning session, economic development was one of the pillars. It'll outline the goals and objectives for the economic program. It'll establish measurable performance metrics, and it'll provide an outline of for the expenditure of agency funds. So the idea is, as we create the goals, we look at what kind of funding do we need to put towards the accomplishment of that goal. So it'll help us with our budgeting as we move forward. Basically, the strategic planning process is pretty simple. First of all, we need to do an assessment. Where are we? And we do that by a SWOT analysis. We have already completed that portion of the program, of the plan. We met with you. You gave us some of your ideas of strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities. We met with BAB. They also provided input for that, and we've met with staff. We then establish a baseline, which is where we want to be, which is our vision statement, which we'll talk about in just a second. Then we have alignment, and that's how will we get there. And that's where the goals and objectives come in. They set the alignment process of the plan. Then there's the execution. How will we do it? That's the action plan that will be put together as part of the plan. And then there's the evaluate. How are we doing? And that's the performance management. So the idea will be is once we create this document and you approve it and you adopt it, we then begin to implement it, and then we'll come back on probably a quarter basis and report to you how's the progress going on the different goals that have been set by the board. The document format will have the following components. It'll have an executive summary, which just summarizes the plan. It has a vision statement, which we'll go over with you here in a few minutes. It'll have a demographics section, which has already been completed. It'll have the SWOT analysis, which has already been completed. Then it'll have the goals and objectives, and then it will have an implementation plan. And so that's kind of what you will see in the document when it's presented to you. The vision statement is basically, we took the same statement that already exists. This comes from the city's strategic plan, and that is foster economic development in our city that will enhance the amenities available to our residents and provide funding for key community priorities. So basically what the economic development focus is we are to be a revenue generator for the city. The idea is to look at providing goals and objectives and things that will generate that revenue so that you can fund the priorities that you've established as a council to move forward. And so that statement already exists. My question to the board, is there anybody that would disagree with that statement, or do you think we need to have a different one? Any input on that? Okay, that's easy. We've got the vision statement already done. The SWOT or the demographics, basically there'll be different section on this. I just highlighted a couple of things that we have found in the demographics that we've done, and these are based on 2020 demographics. There's a whole section of this that gets into a lot more detail than what this has. It talks about education, it talks about what kind of jobs are being provided, it talks about what's happening with veterans, it talks about renters, homeowners. There's a lot of information, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. So the population in Roy, based upon the 2020 numbers we looked at, was 39,779. Your growth rate's about 1.28% annually. If you read in the paper today, I think Roy was 6%, if I remember right, Mayor?
6.6.
6.6, so that probably stays pretty good since that last census that was taken. The median age is 30.5, the median income is 68,424, and the family income is 74,852. What that shows is that this is a community that has a lot of good wealth, and it has good spendable income. So our job is to try to get them to spend that income in Roy City. That's what this is all about. But those are just a couple of highlights for you, but there's a whole demographics section that you'll see that gets into a lot more detail. Probably more detail than you want, but it is pretty detailed. The SWOT analysis basically is the strengths, which means our competitive advantages. The weaknesses are our competitive disadvantages. Our opportunities are the chances for improvement and progress. Oops, sorry about the spell error there. And threats are a chance for negative impact and decline. We've gone through this. We're going to highlight in the report probably the top 5 of each one of these, and just give us an idea of what we can focus on, particularly in opportunities, and how can we improve our weaknesses. Now, this is what we want to focus on tonight, is the goals and objectives. And really what we want is you look at these goals and objectives, and as you think about them, is where do we want to be in the next 5 years, and how will we get there? That's kind of what as we show these. Now, we've attained these goals from different sources. There's some goals that I put together, the goals that Matt's put together, there's goals that came from BAB. The mayor submitted some of these. And so what we want to do is we share each one of these goals. If you'll kind of just jot down maybe your top 6 or top 7, that's kind of what we want. I think if I remember, we got about 16 here. But if you look at them, maybe if you like one, just, say I like that one. And then what we'd like to do at the very end is maybe you could just give us some direction on the ones you particularly like. And again, we're looking for 5 or 6. So here we go. One goal was create an economic sustainable tax base for the city that grows property tax values, increases local sales tax and franchise, and provides employment opportunities for Roy City. That goal seems to meet a vision statement. The next one is develop a positive brand and image for Roy City. The next one is to coordinate and develop relationships with public and private organizations that can assist Roy City in providing long-term economic sustainability. Another goal that came up was strengthening the downtown commercial core of the city. Another one was develop a comprehensive business retention program. So that goal is for existing businesses is what we'd be looking at in that goal. So I'll give you a few minutes to kind of just look at that. If there's 1 or 2 or 3 that stick out to you that you really like there, then maybe you could just take a real quick jot, and we'll come back and kind of get your input after that. So I'll give you just a couple of minutes to kind of look at those. We only got 2 more slides, so. And again, what we're asking you to do is help set the goals, and then we'll put the implementation and the objectives together of how we'll accomplish those goals, and then we'll bring that back for you to review. Next one, focus, and some of these are similar, but they're just worded a little different. Focus on recruitment on higher paying jobs for all skills and education levels. Define the business hubs of the city and define the type of business to be recruited to these hubs. Create mixed-use developments within defined areas in Roy City. Develop targeting policies and incentives to achieve desired economic growth. Provide business services for existing and startup businesses. Establish and review internal policy or processes to ensure a competitive cost of doing business. Expand economic development opportunities.
Can I ask what provide business services for existing and startup businesses? Is that like the loan program you're talking about?
That could be
or are
the
there
loan
other
program.
things?
That could be some programs that are offered to the Chamber of Commerce. It could be helping a business prepare a business plan to get them ready for going to get a loan from a bank. It could be sitting down with them and sharing with them what are some of the things that financing companies look for. It could be putting a page together that when you come to Roy to do business, this is what you need to do. This is how you get a business license. This is how you put in for a building permit to renovate your building. So it's given them maybe a packet of information that could be given to businesses when they come into Roy City.
Do we currently have anything like that, Randy?
I'm not aware that we do. We may have some informational thing that maybe the BAB put together, but I'm not aware if we have anything like that.
And so when you talk about someone giving advice, it wouldn't be someone in the city that would be giving the advice, but we might give them a handout of
Where to go get that
where
advice.
to go get that advice.
That's
Okay.
right. We tell them where they could find information to help start up a business plan. We could tell them where to go to get information about available financing that might be together, where to go talk about an SBA loan. Those types of things would be included in that packet. So in my mind, that would be, as I think of that, the implementation would probably be putting together a packet of information that would look at that. So if that were one of our goals, that would be something that we'd be looking at.
Thank you.
And the last one, promote a business-friendly environment, make Roy a destination for visitors, assess, improve transportation road networks, and work with UTA on mobility solutions to address business needs, define areas in the city to promote economic development opportunities, developing a marketing plan or materials to assist in the recruitment process, and develop policies and procedures that will support economic development programs. You've kind of started that a little bit with some of the policies and procedures that we brought to you for your consideration. So we've kind of started that goal a little bit, I think.
So you're going to give us this list, and then we'll analyze it and think about it? And
I can certainly
back?
give it to you and send it back. If you had any specific input that you could see today that you wanted to provide to us, we'd certainly take that right now. If there was any goals that that really came up and said, yeah, I like that one, and I think that ought to be part of the plan. The goal will be to have a goal that deals with business recruitment, because that's what we want to do. We want to bring businesses into Roy. We'll have a goal that will deal with business retention, because we want to retain business. And then the other goals are probably set up to what you want to do. It might be preparing ourselves so that we can be ready for that business retention. It might be looking at policies and procedures and changing them where we need to. It could be utilizing the BAB in a different role, in a different way than what we have now. They could become more of a sounding block for what we want to do. So the idea is, though, that definitely economic development's all about creating wealth. Keep that in mind. That's our number one purpose of having economic development, is we want to create wealth in the city, and that's what we try to do. So we kind of want to have our goals that fit around that type of concept. Now, if it's easier for you to say, staff, go pick 6. Bring them back and let us look at them. We're happy to do that. But we kind of got to get your input as to how you would like us to go forward, because this is the last section of the plan that needs to be drafted. And we didn't feel good about drafting that. Let's come to you and see what your input was.
Well, I know for me, I like to think things through a bit, and so I would really like to have that list that I could analyze and decide, because like you say, some of them kind of cross over a little bit.
Right, they do.
And so which one maybe says it better, or which one accomplishes the goal? So for me, that would work best for me.
Okay, and I can send this out to you. I'll email this presentation to you. You can look it over. And then again, if you want to give us some input, our goal would be to try to have this plan ready for review to come back to you in your second meeting in September. So the idea would be to get your input probably within the next week or so that we could kind of finalize these goals and these objectives. But if you had anything now you wanted to share with me, I'd love to hear it. If not, we'll get this out to you and give you some time to come back and give us input.
Board members, you okay with that approach?
I wrote a few things down, but I mean, the things that I want to do is to strengthen the downtown commercial. You know, I mean, we have such a great opportunity because we're right off the freeway. And so I'm hoping that eventually we'll get some new business and that we passed everything for to get there. And then I focus on higher recruiting, you know, higher paying jobs. I mean, with Northrop Grumman, I mean, they have a lot, you know, we're going to have a lot of money up there. I'd like to get a lot of stuff in Roy City for them to come and spend their money and make it a destination place in Roy. My kids are telling me this all the time. I mean, we do have, you know, Aquatic Center, the Burger Bar, you know, different things like that people only come to Roy for, but they're always thinking out of the box of something different, you know, to bring to Roy City that other cities don't have. I know when me and Matt, when we were in St. George and they had that really cool bike park and things like that, I don't know, just trying to think outside the box. That's what my kids are always trying to think of, something so cool that only Roy City could have.
Okay, it's good input.
Good comments. Everybody I understand on the board feels comfortable to go ahead and have Randy send it to you. Then you got roughly 1 week to respond back.
Yeah.
Okay, Randy, that's the action.
We'll have that out to you tomorrow.
Okay, if you can send those charts, then we can provide that. I have mine already written from the charts, but I'll send those to you when I send my input to you along with the other board members, and then you can encapsulate the top priority ones and then go from there.
Okay. And then the plan will be is once we've got this plan kind of finalized, we'll meet with Board Member Wilson and Board Member Saxton to kind of review everything, get your input if we need to change or anything before we bring it back to the board. So you'll see everything one more time.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Good rundown. Board members, we have one other discussion item before we get into the action items. One is to do a review of the Roy City guidelines. Specifically, I sent you a white paper. It was on the Roy City Development Agency Guideline Policy and Procedures for the Relocation Grant Program. I provided to you a little bit of history on how we got there. Simply put, there's a discussion for this policy that suggests is that it might be a little ambiguous in terms of defining what is a project and how does the project relate in terms of how we issue grants. As you remember, and I sent in a thing back on May 4th, the RDA board met. You looked over some draft policies. You had lots of questions. You elected to table that policy at the time, and it wasn't until May 18th that the RDA board then finalized a Resolution 21-4 adopting a policy of how we're going to administer the grants. In that policy, as it's written, I believe there's a discussion that talks about where it could be ambiguous in terms of defining what appears to be a project and what is not a project. Remember, once there's a project established, then the intent was that would facilitate then an applicant to submit an application for the grant. But the wording, and I brought this to your attention, the wording that says specifically in the statement, the purpose statement says the creation of the Southeast and Southwest Community Reinvestment Project areas are to be considered as redevelopment-initiated projects for these guidelines. And as I stated in the white paper I sent you, I did not believe that it was the intent of this that that we would define then these CRAs that we've established as being projects. In my opinion, and I said it to you, I believe they were tools to help facilitate development projects, but they were themselves were not projects. But the statement is in the current policy, and I'd ask that we review that. This discussion did take place with the Economic Development Committee. The Economic Development Committee does recommend that the council reconsider the existing policy and make just a minor change in terms of clarification to make it less ambiguous.
You mean the board and not the council?
Excuse me, the board.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I pay attention every now and again.
Yeah, I do that too. Yes, that the board would reconsider the policy. And with that, then now this is just the policy. This is not a conversation about dilly-dallies or anything about that. I'm separating those two issues here. This is a policy conversation, and then we have an action item to discuss the dilly-dally application. So with that, any comments, any questions? Maybe Andy, you can give us your thoughts in terms of your assessment of the policy as written.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to. The purpose of this grant program initially, what we were looking at was to pay some help with a relocation of a business if there was a state or federal project that required it, or a city-approved project that required the relocation of the program. We run into a little problem. We have that in the specifics on the policy, but there's a sentence that's in the purpose that says that a project is the creation of a CRA. Okay, so that's created a little ambiguity for us between that, and I think what we could do is we need to take out that sentence where the creation of a CRA, that shouldn't be a project. So if we take that out, then I think we clarify that ambiguity, and we could also define more in the specifics what a project is. So in what you'll be looking at here later tonight, based on this ambiguity, what you'll have before you could be eligible for consideration, but eligibility for consideration does not mean approval, and that's stated right there in the policy. So when we get to looking at any of the loans, we're going to have to look at the section at the very bottom of it that says reason for relocation is the business will be impacted by a project approved for funding and development by a federal or state agency, or the business has been impacted by a redevelopment project approved by the RDA and insufficient funds were made available to cover the relocation expenses. So considering just the issue before us that we're talking about now is, yes, I think we should come back and amend that so there is no ambiguity. The rest, what I filled in later, really comes into the consideration on when you make a determination to approve a grant application.
Okay, board members, here's what's in front of you. There is a recommendation then to remove the last sentence in the purpose statement, and there's a recommendation in front of you to consider clarifying what a project is and therefore providing a definition of a project within this policy. Comments on that?
Is that definition in here written now, or is that
No.
something we'd be adding?
We'd have to add.
We'd have to add that to it.
We need to add that. Comments, thoughts, feelings on this policy?
So do we have a draft of what that would look like, Randy?
No, but I could give you an idea in my mind of what I think it would be. I think we would look at a definition of a project being a project that has come before the RDA board for consideration of approval and providing a tax increment incentive. So what we're doing is we're going to look at actual project that we bring to you and you need to take action on in an open meeting that would mean that this project is being funded by us, we've agreed to it, and if there's a business that's being impacted because of our approval of that project, and there's no other funding available to them, then we would look at, they could come to us and ask for the grant funds to help them relocate from that impacted area. Now, what we're hoping, and this is what I want to clarify with you, is we're hoping if that happens, if we've got a developer that's going to want to do a development of a project, an area that currently has businesses, we're hoping that that owner or that developer will work out with the owner and provide whatever funding needs to be provided to move that business. If they don't, then they can come to us as last resource. But this is what we're going to do. If that falls onto us to pay for that relocation, we will deduct those costs from the increment that the developer is going to receive and reimburse us. So we're going to make it very clear with the developer when we meet with them, because our goal is we don't really hope that this policy is implemented, particularly for redevelopment projects. And we're hoping if it's a federal or state, there's plenty of money to take care of that. But if it ends up being in a worst-case scenario where the developer has done that and didn't provide that, we're going to sit down and make it very clear to the developer, you should do this up front, because if you don't, we're going to penalize you from the increment because we're going to get this money back. It's not something that we really should step forward. So I'm hoping that as they move forward, we don't do it. But to me, that is kind of where I see the definition being. Now I'll have to work with Andy on the wording and the semantics of that, but that's kind of in my mind what I thought would be a definition of what constitutes a project.
Comments?
I agree with that, what you're thinking about a definition, that it's been funded, it's in increment, and there's been a request.
Yeah, and we're approving the project. I mean, we're actually saying, we're giving you increment, go forward with this development.
They're ready to start
And
turning.
they're ready to
start
start.
turning dirt.
Right. And when we get into the incentive policy, you'll see that there's even a process that has to be done before we even get to that stage. But with that being said, that's kind of what our thinking is.
Because all those businesses, when they start like widening to have another left-hand turn, that laundromat that looks the best it's looked in years.
Right.
And then we're going to, so they could be one if they could.
They could, but what'll happen is because there's federal funding involved in this project,
Right.
the 5600 South is not only state funding, but I believe, Mayor, if I'm correct, there is some federal funding. So they're going to have to follow a federal relocation program, which
Right.
is probably one of the best relocation programs available. I mean, it compensates a business up to $45,000.
So we would be like third in line.
We would be third in line. We'll be your last resource to come to if you need any funding for relocating your business. And you're going to have to meet our requirements in order to qualify.
So Randy, could they ostensibly get funding from all three of those resources?
No, because the way we've set this policy up, well, I guess maybe there could, but the way we've set this up is, first of all, they have to, if you look through the policy, one of the requirements is they go to those agencies first, they get that funding, then they have to come to us and show us what didn't get compensated. And
This is more
why,
like gap.
And why, yeah, this is a gap, and why didn't get compensated.
Okay, thank
You know, is it because you didn't ask for it? Is it because it's not eligible under their program? And then we have the right to review that and determine whether or not it should be a relocation cost. So we're kind of the last resource, but they're going to have to provide quite a bit of information to us to qualify for it.
Thank you.
Other comments, thoughts?
So, under the current policy, if someone provides an application at this time, then it goes under the current code. But then, if we change the code, then the future applicants would, of course, go under that, so.
That's correct. In fact, if I could make a recommendation to what's already been stated, my recommendation would be that if you authorize us to go ahead and make those policy changes, I'd also say that there be a moratorium on any application that we might receive between now and then, so it doesn't fall under the current policy. We have one application that we have received under the current policy, but no others.
I would agree with the moratorium until we get this vetted out.
Okay?
So with your motion, if you want us to move forward with this, I would also ask you to include that in it.
And the moratorium, we probably need a specific time. Is that 6 months, 3 months?
I hope to have this done and ready for you at your next RDA meeting. So I don't think
That
it'll
could be
that
6
long.
months, though.
No.
No, we're going to get back
Next
on
meeting.
at least a monthly schedule. is
Yeah,
what
we
our
need to
goal
get,
is.
we need to get this through. So what's in front of you right now would be is then the removal of the last sentence in the purpose statement of the current guidance, and then a definition defining what a project is. And that's how we'll enhance this, take the ambiguity out of this, and then give us, I think, a stronger policy.
So do we have to make a motion to send it back to?
You just, what I'm looking for, and I'll just simply do a vote because I want to make sure the record, I get everybody on board with this. I just want to make sure that you agree. This is a discussion item, but I want to make sure for the record I get your input. It's not an action item by which we're approving anything. The only thing you're approving is allow the city to go forward to develop the changes in the policy.
With the moratorium
and-
in place
With the
until it's
moratorium,
done.
and bring it back to you for your vote. Are you okay with that?
I
Okay.
approve. I
So
approve
is
of this
that a-
message.
Okay, so I just want to
That
make sure
take
the
a
record
motion?
we get this. So I will then call for a vote, okay, Morgan? This is the approval to go ahead and basically make the appropriate changes to the existing guidelines and establish a moratorium that we will not entertain any more applications at the time that you voted, if we get a majority of the vote to agree.
So moved.
You're good.
Seconded.
Okay, I got a first and a second. I want a roll call vote on this one. Morgan?
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, so I now have unanimous, okay, perfect. And we will proceed then with the appropriate changes to the grant program policy and bring that back to you for your approval. Okay, with that, we have 2 action items we want to go through. I'd like to first, I'm going to take this a little bit out of sequence, I apologize. I'd like to address the application for the revolving fund that came from Ridgeline Realty, and then I want to talk about the application that we received for a grant program from Dilly Dallies. So let's first talk about Ridgeline Realty, okay? This is a revolving loan request for $30,000. At this moment, go ahead, let's talk about it, what we have at this moment in terms of the applicant.
So we received the application from Brenda Nilsson for the Ridgeline Realty building that she has on 4400 South, 1885 West. What she's asking for the money is she'd like to do a renovation of her building, particularly her basement. She'd like to go and finish the basement. She wants to turn that into a training area. And also it opens up the ability to have a few more agents. She's really cramped for space. She's been very successful, and she'd like to have that. But the training area would also be very helpful for her business. She also could probably provide other training for other realtors if necessary. The total cost of that renovation is $69,000. So $30,000 would be from us, and the balance would be equity that would come from her cash reserves. So she would be doing that. According to the guidelines that we have established for this program, she has met and provided all of the required information that we need. She has, as I mentioned, she's putting 56% of equity into the loan. The funds are being used for a purpose that is allowed under our loan guidelines, which is renovation of buildings. The real issue that we have on this, and we have a recommendation for you, is that when we look at the collateral for the loan, it would be, she said it would be the building. She currently has 2 mortgages on that building. Now, she's paid down those mortgages quite a bit, but there's still 2 liens in front of us. So if we were to use that as collateral, we would be in a 3rd position. Right now, looking at the value of an appraisal that she gave us, but it's 2 years old, and as you all know, real estate has really improved. So I think the value is probably higher than what she stated. But based on that, if we were to use the collateral, there would only be, after you take care of the first lien and the second lien, there's about $39,000 left. And we just don't feel very comfortable, even though she's got a good record of, got a great credit report, she's got good income and everything else. It's just the what if that we always have to be wary of when we're making and using public funds. So our position is that we would like to recommend that that perhaps the loan could be approved based upon an appraisal that would show at least another $100,000 to $125,000 of equity.
Randy, I'd be concerned about renovation costs as well,
Well,
right now.
just to give you an idea, she submitted a bid to us when she submitted this application back to us, I think it was in May, early June. She had a bid, and that bid was $49,000. I had her update it. It's now $69,000.
Yeah.
So it has increased $20,000 in just 60 days. So you're right, and what we need to do is we just need to, the way we have to look at this is we got to look at the worst case scenario, which would be if there was ever a default or if she were to go out of business and we wanted to protect our $30,000, then we've got to buy off 2 other mortgages that total about $290,000 today. And so what we're trying to say, if there's more equity and more value, then maybe you look at your risk as being, maybe that's not so bad to protect it. And then again, would we have a use for that building? If that building could be used for city purpose, you put recreation in there or put some other department in there, then maybe it's not a bad thing. But right now, I think our concern is it's just that we need to see if what and I think it would be very beneficial. It's a 2-year-old appraisal. I would be shocked if that didn't come in at least $450 in today's market.
Where's that building at again?
It's behind 7-Eleven
It's
on
behind 7-Eleven
4400.
on 4400
Is it the old
South.
Thomas
Peterson's.
Alstead Foot Building?
Yeah, I don't know what it was
Oh.
before, but she has done a wonderful job.
And the
She-
same owner owns the car wash there that come forward and asked for
Right.
some help to do
Yeah.
the car wash. She's a great asset to the community.
I-
I'm just concerned about
I
what
would get
we're
it
showing
appraised,
as
yeah.
equity.
Yeah, so what we would recommend is, we would ask you, let's table this, until we get an updated appraisal.
Right.
Then let us take that back to the Economic Development Committee and have them look at it. But I do feel that if there's a higher value, then we're in a better position, even in a third, to buy that out. Because if you think about it, you may have $200,000 or $150,000 of equity, and it may not be a bad way to do it because it'd be easier for us if we had to buy it to go get a loan on that if there was that much value in it.
Well, I would make a motion, we table it pending another appraisal.
Current appraisal.
Right.
Okay, and I have a motion on the table.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, and now I have a second on that motion. This is going to be a roll call vote. Morgan?
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
Did I say cancel again?
Oh, she is too.
She did. Oh, yeah.
Board members, right?
Board members, uh-huh.
Remember, I apologize.
It's okay, that's
all
easy to
good.
do.
Okay, we have a motion to table. We'll hold off on that one until an updated appraisal is done on the property and forwarded back to us.
Right, I'll ask her to do that, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Randy. We now have an application for a grant from Dilly Dallies for a request for $15,000. I want to basically let Randy talk about from that. He's gathered the documentation. I need a little bit of a legal review, Andy, from your perspective, and then I'd like the council to kind of talk about it, and we need kind of a decision what you'd like to do. So with that, Randy, go ahead, and let's begin the conversation.
So basically, what I've done is the application was for $15,000. The use of funds, there were a number of items that they listed on their application that they'd like to get reimbursed for. It included about $1,196 for moving costs. It was $6,798 for marketing materials. There was $11,275 for furniture, and then there was $9,868 for leasehold improvements. And then they also put in there the fact that they had to pay for 2 leases, one on their current building and I think 6 months, if I recall, on their former location, which was where Woodbury's property was, just behind the pawn shop. So looking at your guidelines, this is where we have found. First of all, the first is the business located within an adopted redevelopment project area? Yes, it is. It was located in the 1900 East CRA, and they moved to the 1900 Southwest CRA. So they are in an existing project area. Did the business relocate within Roy City? Yes, they did. They moved from the Woodbury property to this property on, I believe it's on 5600 South, 1930 West is the address. Was the reason for the relocation due to the business being impacted by a project funded by a state or federal agency, or been impacted by a redevelopment project approved by the RDA? And are there no other funding or assistance has been offered to the business? The relocation was not due to any state or federal program, and the RDA has not yet approved a project in either one of those project areas. However, I did note that the applicant was located on property which the owner had indicated to them that they would be redeveloping, and that they would not be interested in renewing a lease at a 5-year term that they had requested. The other requirements if other relocation funding is available, did the applicant apply for the available funding? Again, there was no other funding available, so there was nothing for the applicant to apply for. And with that, since there's no other funding available, the applicant was not required to provide the information regarding the other funding or provide us anything more than just documentation to support the relocation costs, which they have provided us. Some of that is invoices, some of that is bills, some of that is just paid, some of that's checked, but we do have evidence to support at least the $15,000 request under the application. So with that, does it meet the guidelines? It does. I think there's one area that has to be discussed, and that is the one point that I brought up about how was the relocation impacted by either a state, federal, or redevelopment project. And that's what I wanted to present to you as far as the applicant meeting the guidelines.
Can I ask a question on that? Did the applicant try to work with the property owner for lease forgiveness?
My understanding is that the applicant did go talk to the owner about the fact that they were concerned about the rezoning that was being discussed by the city, that they felt like they needed to find a new location. They did ask the applicant or the owner if he would give them a 5-year, if he would give them 5 years. Talking with the owner, they indicated no, they did not want to go 5 years because of their plans for development, but they would be willing to work with them with a year-to-year type of lease so that they could maybe stay or perhaps work with them to see if there was other property that they owned. And I would imagine that would be in the where the Keene Buffet, because that's the only property that Woodbury has in addition to this marketplace property, to see if they'd go. The owner indicated to me that they came back and said 1-year lease will not work for us. But the next thing they heard from him is when they came to the owner and said, we found another location, we're moving. And they did ask, but the owner did not feel that he had impacted them to the point that he should forgive them of their lease.
Okay.
So the business owner chose to early terminate the lease.
That is my understanding.
When I say business owner of Dilly Dally's, not property owner.
Yeah, 'cause
They chose to find a new location because they did not feel like that their issue was, if you move forward, I need to find another place if you're not going to give me a 5-year lease. And so because Woodbury indicated to them they were not interested in giving a 5-year lease, they went
The
out
lease
and
they
looked for
had
other property.
was good till July, I heard.
I believe the lease went till July of 2020.
So
I
they had to
think.
pay them back.
They had to pay the 6 months rent, I think, from the time they vacated until their lease was up. And if I recall, I believe the lease was up in July of 2020, I think.
So they could have stayed in their other location and not had to pay that.
They could have stayed until they did, but they felt
But
like
they felt that opportunity to move.
was there. They found a place, and they just felt like the opportunity was there to jump on that before it was taken or somebody else had moved into the space. Mr. Saxon, if there's anything I misrepresented, please clarify that for us.
Well, Joe had mentioned, I mean, the Dilly Dallies never terminated their lease.
Oh, yeah, they stayed in it. They paid
They
it.
stayed in it and paid it. And
But they vacated the building.
They vacated the building, but they continued to honor their lease with Woodbury's.
yeah,
Okay. Andy, you want to kind of give us a legal perspective in terms of this particular situation from your perspective?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. What I'm looking at here, to approve this, if you look down on the requirements, I'll just read that, and I think it's the issue you have to decide. But the reason for relocation is the business will be impacted by a project that's been approved for funding and development by a state or federal agency. That's out of the question, okay? So we'll just look at the next part of that paragraph. It says the business has been impacted by a redevelopment project approved by the RDA and insufficient funds were made available. So that's the determination you have to make. And if you decide that it has been, then you can go forward. If you decide that it hasn't, and that's up to you. And Randy, if you need to elaborate any more on that.
Well, I think that it gets into that ambiguity that we talked about a little bit. Does the creation of a project area constitute an impact? That's really what it is, because if you look at what we do say that a creation of a project area is considered a project. And therefore, the question becomes, in your mind, does that impact the business to the extent that they were required to relocate and they needed to move forward?
To me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Sant, but then anytime we create a project area, not a project, but a project area, then we would be open to having to compensate people who decide to cut and run.
That's not necessarily true. Right now, when we create project areas, again, if you're talking about an urban renewal area, which is the blighted area, then yes, there could be some relocation required. It used to be under the statute that you did have to have relocation guidelines in place whenever you created a project area. But the legislature moved that requirement from the statute. You no longer have to have that, nor do you have to give the property owner preference to development within the project area. But what would normally happen is, just like we said, if a redevelopment project area was being discussed with the redevelopment agency and there was existing businesses in there, one of the things we would be talking with the developer is, where are you with those existing businesses? What's your plan with those existing businesses? Are you handling them? Or are you having the owner terminate those leases? And is the owner taking care of that and you're compensating the owner for that? But really, there's no requirement that says we have to relocate people in the event that we impact them. Now, we're putting relocation guidelines together that we just talked about, that we may very well have that in as a definition of a project.
I guess my concern would be a precedence.
And that's a very good point. And that's why we have said that we have one application under these existing guidelines. And both, I think Andy and I agree that you should be considering this application under these existing guidelines, with the understanding that we're going to come back and amend those that would probably, in my mind, probably reduce or eliminate some of that precedence that you're concerned about.
So when you told us all their costs, did you add that up total?
No, what I did, that was submitted on their application, and then I had them submit invoices, and I looked at their invoices, and their invoices do support, not all of that. It does support, it supported it supported the moving costs, it supported the furniture, it supported the leasehold improvements, but there was some ambiguity on my part, or looking at it on what was marketing and what wasn't. But if right there with the moving costs, the furniture, and the leasehold improvements, not taking into consideration reimbursement for leases, that more than covers the $15,000 request.
Board Member Royal, I'd like to just reiterate too, even with making the amendments, still when you're looking at this today, you've got to find that it's been impacted by a redevelopment project that's been approved by the RDA.
But we don't have one.
So that's a determination you guys.
So the
need to
answer is
make.
we can't be impacted by it because we don't have one.
Here's the deal. And we've had this conversation before, but I'll share it with you who haven't heard it. As soon as this council started talking about rezoning that property, we impacted that business because they were the only profit business operating up there at the time. Everything else was empty. And so as soon as we made headlines, it became public that we were looking to move and we were looking to change. And as a result of that, they were impacted.
Respectfully, Brian,
No, that's fine.
if they had stayed and finished their lease,
But
wait a minute. If they had, then we would not be having this conversation. They
Well-
chose to say they were impacted, but again, we can go either way and say maybe they were and maybe they weren't.
That's true. But here, and again, my family owned its own business. My dad was a self-employed businessman. And so as he went, the family went. And the bottom line was that these people that have been in your community, our community, for over 20 years doing business, if they can't get an economic break, well then what is our future going to look like? I know that's a Pollyanna kind of argument, but no business that's got 20 years in the community is going to go by a year-to-year lease. And that's all that they were willing, that's all Woodbury was willing to give them. And I don't want to pull Woodbury into this, but here's the bottom line. This city paid $35,000 to Woodbury for a dirt patch. And we can't help somebody that has proven their value and their loyalty to the city. What their charges came up to 82, wasn't that 83,000?
I think on the application it was a little over 82,000,
Okay.
including the
But I noticed, I just looked at that, that's lease on both properties.
That's correct. There's 53,400.
So you've got to take out one of the leases for 6 months.
No, and I agree. And if you take that out, they're still well within $15,000.
Well, again, when I looked at this, I didn't even consider the leasehold. I looked at the other expenses. I looked at the moving costs. I looked at the cost to do leasehold improvements in the building. And I looked at the furniture that they indicated they had to purchase for the building. And then I tried to look at some of the marketing. I didn't even take into consideration leasehold. I mean, and the reason I didn't is because I'm not sure that we should be buying out a leasehold.
We should.
And therefore, I didn't take that into consideration as reimbursable costs. But the other costs do come up in over the $15,000 grant request that they put in.
Well, let me offer you a thought, board members, because I think obviously we're at a decision point. The way I see it, you basically have three choices. You can tonight approve and move forward with the request. The application is sitting with us today. Okay? You've been given all the information. The basis of the information was fundamentally based on what we believe was a policy that needs improvement. You can simply choose to table this at this moment and wait for a project to go at that location. As soon as the project goes in that location, then the way I see it is, it now meets all of the requirements. Remember, the debate that has taken place here was a debate about, was the city involved with a project? And the comment was made, there is no project at that location. Or, number three would be, is you simply deny tonight the application. Three choices.
Or approve it.
I said that. You can approve the application because it's sitting in front of you. You can delay approving the application and wait for a project to go in. This is your decision, so you have some flexibility. Or you can disapprove the application altogether tonight. It's really down to those three options.
Can I ask just a clarification? I understand that project's going to be redefined, but in this case, where it's not redefined, can project be considered a zoning change? Is project, because that was a redevelopment idea from the city to change that zoning to help with redevelopment.
In a way, it reminds me of a zoning change, where typically if you change your zone, whatever business is there can continue to exist, and that business doesn't have to move. It'd be a
They become legal
non-conforming use.
non-conforming.
Yes. So in that way, that is similar.
And I think to your point, Diane, the intent of that would be is what we're saying is that the fact is the Chapter 13 changed the zoning across the entire downtown. Every one of those businesses, by some nature, could be legal non-conforming today. You'd have to go in and look at individually, but the zone changed everybody. And so, to your point is, yes, it did. The creation of the CRAs, okay, were established. I think the comment would be is, does the creation of a CRAs constitute a requirement to simply, the people need to move? If that's the case, every business that's currently existing in those two CRAs, and by the way, we do also have RDAs and other parts of the city that already exist and have existed for almost 20 years now. Does that constitute a requirement that the city should compensate for a move? That really is the argument. Or,
Well, I'm just going to say it. Due to the ambiguity, I recommend, or I make a motion, we table it until a project is truly formed, and then reevaluate it at that time.
I'll second that motion.
okay, I have a motion then to basically table the review, as an action item, the review of the Dilly Dally's $15,000 grant application. And I have a first by Joe, and I have a second by Jan. I want this as a roll call vote, so please, if you would, go ahead and give us a roll call vote on that. Morgan?
Member Jackson,
Aye.
Board Member Jackson,
Aye.
Board Member Saxton,
Nay.
Board Member Wilson,
Aye.
Board Member Burrell,
Aye.
Board Member Paul.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, 4-1.
Well, I have a question. Where does that money come from for that
What
grant?
you did is, when you did the budget, when we approved the guidelines, we moved money over from the revolving loan fund into a grant fund. So the money's currently in the budget.
It's in the budget, ready for you to decide how you want to spend it.
And if I remember right, I think that was $50,000, as I recall, is what we put in that line item.
And does that get renewed every year, $50,000? or just-
Well, what happens is you as a board get to decide on the budget.
The
So what
budget's
we'll
new
do
every
is
year.
the staff will put the budget together, bring it back to you for your approval.
Yep, that's how it works. Okay,
So can I clarify, because their application was placed under this criteria, and we've tabled it, their application would still be under this criteria, and if a redevelopment project comes in, then it would still be under this criteria?
I'll let the attorney answer that. In my opinion, Randy's opinion is I think it would still fall under that. It'd be kind of grandfathered, but I'll let Andy answer that.
And the only thing that I want a little clarification would be that motion, was that to come under the new grant provisions or to just table it and come under the old grant? Because what you said in that motion was until a project's approved, then we decided at that time.
Yeah.
In clarification, my motion, the reason I made the motion to table it was until a project is approved and is in place, then it can come, then it technically fits the bill of the way it's written right now.
Would it be a new application at that point?
Yeah, my question then would be, I mean, we've already had the move. So a subsequent project, how does that change? That wouldn't require them to move because they've already moved. So I don't know if we want to consider rescinding the motion and taking a look at that and see how you guys want to make that future determination. If you're tabling it, you know, one reason might be that you want to think about this a little bit longer. Okay, you might want to see what we changed, but I mean, how is that going to impact? You may want to leave it like that, but if we wait later down the road till there's a project approved, who knows how long that's going to be? And then does that really change our determination here tonight?
My question on that, Andy, would be, so let's say that a development project doesn't come up for 5 years, 7 years. So everybody that moves in that time, would they be open to apply for move funds?
Well, no, because hopefully we will have.
Well, we
amended
put a
it.
moratorium on it.
Yeah, and so, but again, we're always going to look at, did that project impact their relocation?
So the question is this a project or not a project? That
Right.
chapter 13,
Right.
whatever we want to call that.
Which technically, it's not a project.
And technically,
The CRAs are not
We
projects.
created a CRA, but it's not a project yet.
Correct. But because the language
That's the
within the
ambiguity.
Because in that
We have no
state-
projects in that CRA that we have approved.
Right. But the language within the guidelines said that the creation of the two CRAs constituted a project.
Well, tabling it doesn't approve or deny it, but with what Andy's saying, can the motion stand that it's tabled, or?
We could do a motion to rescind if you'd like to do that at this moment.
The motion
and
to
then we could do
rescind
a
that
new
decision simply puts it back to the original decision. But I think
Well,
what Andy's
regardless,
saying is
the decision would be to table it for further information.
for further detail.
okay.
You could do that.
With maybe the purpose to table was
Okay.
incorrectly stated, but
Okay.
the motion to table.
So
stand.
let's do that, and that brings a good point. So do I have a motion then to rescind the decision to table?
Motion to rescind should be by
Do I have a motion then
board
to
member Paul.
rescind the decision?
So I'll
to
make a
table?
motion to rescind
Okay.
my previous motion of tabling it until a project's created.
Okay, that's the motion. Do I have a
I
second?
will second that.
I have a second. That's a roll call vote. Morgan?
Okay. Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
Board Member Jackson.
Aye.
Board Member Saxton.
Nay.
Board Member Wilson.
To rescind?
To rescind. This is a decision to rescind.
Put a new motion.
Aye.
Board Member Burrell.
Aye.
Board Member Jackson.
No, it'd be
We've
Paul.
already done board member Jackson.
I'm sorry, Paul.
Aye.
Okay. Now, we've rescinded that decision.
Becomes the
Now,
second
it comes
motion.
back now to a motion.
Now, if I make a motion to table it for information, that becomes open-ended.
Yes,
It does.
and that's okay.
And you can leave it open as long as you want.
I
Or
make
you
a
can-
motion, we table this for further information pending the nope,
No more,
nope.
Just
Back.
further information.
I make a motion, we table this for further information.
Okay, so I have a motion then to table for more information.
I'll second it.
And I've got Joe and I've got Ann. Second. This is a roll call, please. One more time. Morgan?
Board Member Wilson,
Nay.
Board Member Saxton,
Nay.
Board Member Paul,
Aye.
Board Member Jackson,
Aye.
Board Member Burrell.
Aye.
Okay. Motion approved, 3-2. Okay, so now we have a motion to table, waiting for more information. And then we need to provide more details.
But how long, I mean, I know these people too. I've known them for over 30 years.
Uh-huh.
And I just don't want this to just keep going on, and then not do anything about it neither, because they are a great business. And so how long?
Could be until a board member wants to put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
And it only
You
requires
can
one
put
of
it
you
on
to
the
ask them to
agenda.
put it on the
Okay.
agenda.
Okay. If you think it's gone too long and there hasn't been anything that's done, or you think it's ready for a review, then you choose. But it's on this, and we're gonna bring it back. It may be the timing when it comes back you need to decide as a council or as a board member. Okay, that's everything we had. We had a lot on the table tonight. Thank you. Do I have a motion then to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, I got one. Jan, do I have a second?
Second, I'll second it.
And I got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you. Okay. Busy night.
Is this Steve's? Is Steve? It stays here, okay. I didn't know if it moved or if it went or for what.
Is this how the Senate spends our money? What does that cost us to send that out? Huh? Yeah, I just want to make sure, we're taking third spot. I want to make sure there's more than 39,000.
See you, Brian.
I'll come back.
That's good.
Hey, Brian, would you hand me that keyboard right behind it? I want to make sure that doesn't fall off the edge there. Get it back for the judge. Thank you, sir.